couple of notes in case you missed it. Yeah, Michael Wacha signed with the Padres. Of course he did, because
were you laughing like I was? I was like, AJ Preller, he just can't sit still.
No, he can't. Listen, they do need starting pitching depth, and if they utilize Wacha correctly, which is really a challenge because most managers can't help themselves, although I think Bob Melvin's pretty smart. They just have to really monitor his innings total and keep it down throughout the season. They just have to, because he reaches a certain point, even if he's pitching really well, he reaches a certain point where, pardon the cliche, but he hits the proverbial wall and everything just sort of falls apart. I mean, he's more of a 120, maybe 130 inning guy. And, if he can maintain his stamina and his endurance and durability and stays within the limits of innings, and then, that he's not as vulnerable to injury. So they got to be smart. I mean, he pitched really well last season for the Red Sox until, again, he just kind of crossed that that imaginary line, because there's not really a line, but let's call it a threshold as far as innings, and then it all started to fall apart. But I wish him the best. Man, it's just a shame. It's amazing really to look back on 2013 and what he did and who he was and how quickly it all just kind of unraveled on him. And he's a good guy and was an outstanding pitcher for the Cardinals. They don't win the pennant in 2013 without him. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. A couple of other things before we get into some of the John Mozeliak stuff, and let me find this, all of my friends. It's interesting when you look at the Cardinals, and a lot of the things that people are talking about, and I'll share some notes with you, because there's been a lot of them. Well, because it's the opening of spring training. The biggest question all teams are facing, CBSSports.com. The Cardinals' question is, how will the rotation hold up? Mm-hmm. The Cardinals' calling card for years has been their run prevention, but they're now venturing into the season without Yadier Molina. The staff ERA with Molina last year was 3.52 compared to 3.99 when he didn't catch. They've replaced Molina with Wilson Contreras, who will be tasked with dealing with an unpredictable rotation. Adam Wainwright is 41, and he wasn't good in his last 11 starts last season. Jack Flaherty has flashed, ace upside, but also injury woes and inconsistency. Will Steven Matz produce much? Can Jordan Montgomery put it together? A well above average season. That leaves Miles Miklasz, and while he's probably reliable, it's unlikely he throws like an ace. I think all of that is spot on. Jim, do you?
Yeah, I'm there with you on all those comments. The one thing I would say is, I'm not saying this is all disagreeing with what they said, but I think another wild card here is Dusty Blake and what he can do with a new, fresh outlook.
Sure.
I think that's part of what the improvements could be. I think maybe the Cardinals are thinking that way too, probably a little more than I would look at it that way, but I think that's a factor. And there are questions. I mean, there are just so many that when I look at it, I go, ooh, boy. I would say like the middle to the back end of whatever you think this rotation is kind of like, it's not overly exciting. It's definitely not a rotation you go, well, that's a rotation in most quality divisions you would feel comfortable going in and saying we could compete and win the division with. But because it's the Central Division and you're going, well, it's 3 pitchers for the Brewers and then I think we're okay from the rest of the division. I think we can compete with that. I would have to agree with a lot of what was said there, but Dusty Blake is a wild card for me because I don't know enough about him to get a feel for what he wants, what his direction is, but I'm encouraged based on a lot of guys that you hear have dealt with him, especially the younger guys, and they like him. So if they like him, that's got to be a positive rather than, I don't know, I got to readjust everything. And that doesn't.
Wainwright really likes him too.
Yeah, that's another one. Thank you. Yeah, so if everybody's kind of on board with where he's going, then the whole team should be okay going in some direction. I just don't know what that direction is.
Another note that I got when you look doing a check-in on Baseball Prospectus, they've developed a new system for evaluating defense, and without going into the details, because it definitely is fancy pants stuff. But they basically have come up with a better way, they believe, and I have great respect for Baseball Prospectus. They've come up with a better way to evaluate a fielder's range. And there's like a particular emphasis on like shortstop, second baseman, things like that. Well, actually infield more than outfield, but it's in place, and I'm talking about for outfielders, it's in place. There's this systems in place, but they chose to kind of highlight shortstop in a way that would explain what the case is when they apply their new system for evaluating a fielder's range. And I'll just leave it at this. Paul DeYoung, according to Baseball Prospectus, has below average range, and it's not really even close at the shortstop position based on their new method of evaluation.
Really?
Yeah. And it seems to me it's a pretty tough format, like, because there's a lot of negative ratings for range. But I'm putting that out there because the Cardinals are they want to sell to the media this idea that DeYoung's going to have to earn his way on the team or something. And I'm going to say, no, I'm not ready to buy that. I got an open mind, but I'm not going to believe you just because you say it, that he's actually in a competition. And the one thing they can always hang on is to say, well, look, we know that he's struggled offensively, and we know that he needs to do better, and we expect him to do better. But, last resort, he's an excellent shortstop defensively. Well, if Baseball Prospectus is correct in how they judge a fielder's fielding range, then he's not even that. And I'm not convinced. I'm just throwing it out there. He's not even that. So let's just say Baseball Prospectus knows what they're doing with this. So why would you keep when you're not going to have a lot of great depth anyway? Why would you keep an infielder around who can hit or field all that well?
Obviously, you wouldn't, or you wouldn't think you would, unless you're paying them.
Right,
which is the case here. I'll say this: there's smart people there, so I will reserve judgment, but I do want to see more because he's better than. I think he's a better defensive player than he gets credit for most people.
I don't think his range is great. I've never thought his range is great, but he's been better. He's actually been a really good shortstop because he's sure-handed, he's smart, he knows where to go with the ball, he's got a good arm. But he's also benefited from positioning. The Cardinals have been really good about knowing where to position their guys. And I think DeYoung has benefited from that. But look, I've always had him down for an above-average shortstop, so I'm like you. I'm curious to see if this range factor actually means anything. So I'm talking about Baseball Perspectives, they seem to be pretty happy with what they've done with this because they spent a lot of time working on it. They just didn't throw it together. Hey, there was something, next note. Mm-hmm. There was something on MLB.com. It might have been yesterday, and I saw it this morning, where some of their writers, and it's not the writers who cover teams, they're more just general analysts. They listed 5 breakout candidates, hitters, for 2023. On the list, at number 2, is Nolan Gorman. Now, this is the thing that interests me, that caught my eye, and I must confess, I'm a little ticked off at myself because I never bothered to check this aspect of his hitting performance. We all know about the strikeouts and the swing and miss. There's also some stuff I've been looking at, like hitting profiles in the charts, where he's had a hard time, meaning Gorman, as a rookie last year, he had a hard time with pitches up in the zone, especially the hard stuff. So he's going to have to alter his swing a little bit to be able to get up there and, connect on four-seam fastballs thrown high in the zone, or they're going to eat him alive. So, but then again, we know this already. We know that he's still in development and he's still raw. And in the minor leagues, he did make those adjustments, and he kept moving up and doing well. So he's going to have to do it at the major league level, which ain't exactly new.
Yeah, that's
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty common, actually. But here's the stuff that jumped out to the men and the women at MLB.com who put him on this list as the number 2 breakout candidate. Let me find it here. I got it right here. If you go with the StatCast stuff, last season, at age 22, Gorman was one of the best hitters in baseball in terms of squaring up pitches when he made contact. Making contact is the challenge. But when he did, he's actually one of the best hitters in the game, because you want to hit the ball on the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
He had a sweet spot rate of just about 47%, which was the highest among MLB players that had at least 150 batted balls. So I never would have guessed that Nolan Gorman connected on the sweet spot more than any other hitter in the majors last year on a percentage basis. That's impressive. The other thing, as MLB.com noted, quote, he also had a near elite 14.4% barrel rate. That's the percentage of batted balls with an optimal combination of exit velocity and launch angle, typically resulting in homers and extra base hits. Listen, we all know that he has to improve. He's got to reduce the whiffs. We all know that. We can say it a million times. But these stats from MLB.com, specifically from StatCast, they point out something that's really important, and in my view, not enough people understand or want to understand. They want to dismiss him already or something. His contact, if he can ever get it to just a decent percentage, when he makes contact, there's not many hitters in baseball who does to the baseball what he does to the baseball. His ability to hit the sweet spot of the pitch, his ability to, barrel up pitches. Not many guys in the big leagues are as good as he is. And he did all that at age 22. So I put that out there. And by the way, these ain't fancy pants stats. This isn't nerd stuff. This is that's why Major League Baseball, with their StatCast system, that's why they installed all these cameras all over ballparks. They can record all this information. It's very accurate, and it's very important, because every numbers there is, it shows when you got a high rate of hitting the sweet spot and a high rate of barreling up pitches. Your chances of being, extra special are really, really good. His problem, again, once again, class, he's got to make the contact. But there is a lot there to look forward to, which is why let's calm down just a bit in judging him as if his whole career was based on 5 bad weeks at the end of the season last year. Let's just have some maturity and give it a little time, because there's a lot to work with there.
It's interesting just hearing another voice, another group of people look at him, and they're so high on him. And as that's being described, I think we're maybe not necessarily you or me or a lot of, but there are people in this town, like you said, they're writing him off. And the reality is, if he does come close to being, let's just say, the type of guy that's just talked about here, imagine what he could do to help that lineup. I mean, imagine that kind of power and that kind of slug in this lineup. I mean, we're all so focused on, Nootbaar, can he do this? And if O'Neill comes back and Carlson, then we'll be fine. But what if Nolan Gorman can become this type of bat in the lineup.
Right.
I mean, gee whiz.
He's got the talent to do it. It's obvious. It's just like many of these kids that come up really early and they have great power. It just takes them a while, man, to get command of the strike zone, and pitch recognition is a big deal. And the only way that can be done is through experience. And his own experience in the minors tells us that he is highly capable of doing that. It's just going to take time at the big league level. But the one takeaway I have from all this stuff, I don't want to hear about, well, there's no shift. Well, he can't play second base. Well, he can't. Listen, I'll use Jeff Kent example again. Nobody cared about Jeff Kent's defense. In my opinion, he should be in the Hall of Fame. He will be when the committees take his case a couple years from now. He hit more home runs than any second baseman in history. Just look him up on Baseball Reference every year. Above average, above average, above average, above average. I mean, his overall performance, his power. No one said this guy shouldn't be playing because his defense is below average. And I'm not saying Gorman will be Jeff Kent. I'm just using him as a model. If he can deliver what everyone hopes he can deliver offensively, or very close to it, no one will give a damn about second base. And the Cardinals, like I mentioned, they are one of the very best in the business at positioning their fielders. So even though it's not a shift per se, if they line him up in the right place, he'll be fine. I mean, is he going to be above average? No. Is he going to be a disgrace to baseball? No. It's all about the bat with him. And I wish people would stop writing these things about, he's competing for a spot on the team. Listen, if he's competing for a spot on this team with that kind of talent and potential, and even what he did at, considering 20%, the final 20% of his season was really bad, what he did in the first 80%, why in the world would he have to compete for a spot on the roster? They're that good? Really? Really? Oh, yeah, the guy that actually, he drove in a run in the game they lost in the playoffs last year to the Phillies, came off the bench. It's just, I think Gorman is so mischaracterized, and his place on the team is so mischaracterized. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And, that includes people that write about the sport and who should know better. I don't know. But I'm pulling for him because I think he's going to be just an enormous talent. We just got to give it time. And we should know better because we knew he was raw and he was young, and that he has a pattern in the minor leagues that we can follow in terms of shaping our expectations. But it went bad on him the final 20% of the season, and everyone's like, well, put Donovan there. I've seen enough. And why would you want to put Donovan there when Donovan provides the most valuable to the Cardinals by being a guy who can play anywhere just about, and having him to move around? Why would you want to limit him to second base, which then greatly reduces the flexibility of your bench? It worked out so well last year. He was not bad really at any position, and a couple of them, especially third base, he was above average. But to be able to just move him around to 6 different positions during the season, what? I'm honestly confused by the thought process there. That was one of the reasons why Donovan was so valuable to the Cardinals. And so why would you box him in at second base when he can fill in everywhere and start just about everywhere? And that is a bonus. There's not many managers or teams that have a player like that. And if you box him in at second, then with Gorman, you're not really giving him an opportunity to improve as a hitter or as a second baseman. Yeah, he can DH, but I don't think the Cardinals want to go that way just yet, and I'm going to wait and see about it. But I just don't see the wisdom of, like, right now saying, oh, he's a DH, period. Can we let it breathe just a bit?
Yeah.
Can we let it breathe just a little bit?
I really think, Bernie, he's going to boot a few balls in the infield at second. But you know what? If he's got the power that we're discussing, he's still going to play. The one thing I think he was better at than I thought defensively, this is not a big issue, but turning the double play, his arm was impressive.
Arm's pretty good.
It was really impressive on flipping the double play. He got a couple where you're like, I don't know if they can turn this, but because he's got an A-plus arm, a third base arm playing second, he zipped it across there and probably got him a few extra double plays this year just by the arm alone. And, yeah, he's going to boot a couple. That's just the way that goes. But if he's going to be a 25 to 30 home run guy and get you, 25, 30 doubles a year and do all those things, he plays in your lineup every day if he's that good. And you deal with a few miscues here and there.
He just needs to be sure-handed, and he needs to get to the balls that are hit not right at him. I mean, obviously he's going to have to go side to side a little bit, but I pointed out, and again, it doesn't matter because nobody wants to listen to it. The Cardinals, in terms of using the shift last season against left-handed batters, I think there was only 3 other teams that used it less. So the whole shift thing in terms of what it means for second base and first base, crazily overstated. And how do I know that? Well, because of the numbers. Not a theory, but because of the actual numbers. The Cardinals did not shift really not anywhere close to most teams, the frequency of shifts against left-handed batters. So I just wanted to point that out again. I'll just keep pointing it out. David Schoenfeld from ESPN gave grades to all 30 Major League teams. He gave, for their offseason, my apologies, he gave the Cardinals a C, which seems about right. He says the Cardinals are, he noted the frustration of Cardinals fans, and he talked about, how the fans wanted them to add a starting pitcher, a shortstop. And he pointed out how Mozeliak acknowledged that the team felt short negotiations with multiple free agents. But as Schoenfield correctly notes, it didn't sound like the Cardinals were in on big names anyway. David Schoenfield goes to write, quote, the Cardinals are risk-averse as any organization. And while it doesn't make for splashy headlines, it's worked for them. They haven't had a losing season since 2007. They don't gamble on risky 9-figure deals in free agency. They trust their prospects and their ability to get most out of them. In the National League Central, they don't have to do as much as they're still the clear division favorites. They're going to count on comebacks from Tyler O'Neill and Jack Flaherty. They're going to count on Lars Nootbaar having a breakout season. I'm sorry, David, that happened last year. And rookie sensation Jordan Walker making an impact in the second half. Schoenfield concluded, I give them a high grade for the Contreras signing, but man, this is a team that really could have used a Verlander or a Rodon. 100% correct.
Yep. Definitely could have. I don't know if this is bad or not to say this, but the reality is, Bernie, I don't expect it when it comes to that type of thing.
No, because they don't want to spend on pitching big.
So from the disappointment standpoint, I'm not disappointed because I never really expected it. You know what I mean by that? It's like, yeah, they're not going to do it, so I'm not really expecting. It would be great, but the reality is, come on, it's the Cardinals. You know that's not what they do.
It'll hold them back in the postseason, but then again, they've had offensive problems too in the postseason. So they're going to have to figure out a way to take that next step. They used to be able to do it, but they've sort of fallen behind the times a little bit, just in their spending more than anything. And I've said this so many times through the years, I don't want them to do anything crazy. They really don't have to do anything crazy. But if you have an obvious need and you're unable to fill it internally, and they have been unable to address the fact they don't have a number one starter, a true number one starter, since maybe Jack Flaherty in the second half of the 2019 season, if you can't fill it within, you're going to have to fill it by trading for it or spending for it. It's as simple as that. One more thing, Jim Bowden at The Athletic, he loves himself some Jordan Walker. So he wrote a piece saying, here are the 5 players I'm most excited about seeing in spring training. He's got Jordan Walker at number 5. Actually, he might have said 10 players, but it doesn't matter. He's got Jordan Walker high on the list. He said, quote, "I'm pretty sure I'm the only analyst who ranks Walker as the number one prospect in baseball. That's what I did in my last top 50 list, which was published last August. I've watched him closely over the last couple of years. I'm amazed at how well he covers the strike zone with his 6'5", 220-pound frame. He has tremendous bat speed that results in both loft and line drive home run power to all fields. He profiles as a 300 hitter. He uses the whole field, and he spits on pitches outside of the zone. In other words, he won't swing at him. I've seen the bat enough to be convinced." Then he talks about how he's going to have to transition to the outfield, and that might take him a while to get comfortable. And that's fair. I mean, that's a good way to put it. But Jimmy Bowden said, "But I do believe he's athletic enough to play there," and he sure seems to be. This is interesting. Jim Bowden reports that, quote, "General Manager Michael Gersh told me on Sunday that if Walker is the best player at his position in camp, he will make the big league team out of spring training." That's cool, but what do we mean by best player at his position in camp? What position are we talking about? We talking about right field? We talking about left field? So the Cardinals give themselves a little wiggle room there, I guess. But no, we'll see. We'll see. I know what Gersh means. I'm going to take him at his word. So this will be fun to watch his progress. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be a lot of fun to do that. Hey, we'll take a timeout, and then I changed the order of things. We're going to listen. We're going to hear from John Mozeliak next, because I wanted to break that up a little, because we talked to Derek Gould so much about Mo and what it means and all that. I wanted to break it up with some other notes and little nuggets, birdie bits, if you will, that I was able to find online. There's a lot of good Cardinals opinions floating around out there. I love the Gorman thing most of all. That was my favorite of all those notes. What I was hollering about last night, I will not holler about it again now, but I'll just calmly reinforce the point. These comments by Mozeliak talking about how Bill DeWitt and he are aligned, and he's very fortunate to work for an owner that he considers one of the best in sport. But more than that, as an owner where they kind of share the same philosophy and they believe in certain things, and they're aligned in how to go about it. And DeWitt was saying the same thing about Mozeliak and talked about their organizational philosophy and everything else. Now, you don't have to be impressed by that. I'm not asking you to be. But it just reinforces what I've been trying to tell everyone for way too long. This isn't if you believe, if you're disappointed and you think the Cardinals are, they're like 3 games better than the Cincinnati Reds at this point, or whatever your complaint is. It isn't like they need to fire Mozeliak. That's just too simplistic, because that's not how they structure their organization. DeWitt and Mozeliak work as a tandem. They're in it together. They make baseball decisions together. John Mozeliak makes the recommendations, but Bill DeWitt is on everything that they are considering, and he will approve or he will say, no, I don't think that works for me. And then they go about their business. So I'm just laughing at these comment sections and some of these things today about, DeWitt, boy, he messed up his chance to do right by the great baseball fans of St. Louis. And I laugh at that on two ends, because I hate to break it to you. The World Series drought's been a while now, and their postseason performance has been really, really depressing. But this ain't exactly like, say, human bondage. I don't believe anyone's suffering. That's number one. And, and go ask some of these other towns about that, how bad you all have it. Not you all, but the way some people complain. The second thing is any dissent that begins with a phrase either exactly or similar to DeWitt needs to fire Mozeliak. Pardon the way I describe this, but it just tells me that you have absolutely no idea whatsoever how this organization is run. DeWitt, Mozeliak, they are a team. and they've been a team working closely together since 2008. You can't separate Mozeliak from DeWitt. They are one entity in terms of the big decisions, the major decisions with this franchise. So if you want to, I don't know why anyone would want to blame Mozeliak solely, individually, for the postseason demise. Why it would be just Mozeliak? Do you all really, or do some of you really think that he sets the payroll? Do you think that he can go sign whoever the hell he wants to? Do you think that Mozeliak can make decisions without having the collapse of the regional sports networks as one of the big problems facing the Cardinals and other teams in terms of revenue flow? You think he can just ignore all that and go out and sign and do whatever he wants? Again, I'm just astounded that people who claim to follow the team are so out of touch about how DeWitt and Mozeliak run the team as far as the baseball stuff. They're in it together, okay? So if you want to fire Mozeliak, which you also need to say, even though it can't happen, what you're saying is DeWitt needs to fire himself. So everybody gets fired, and DeWitt has to step away or whatever it is. So anyway, I'm just trying like hell to just clarify how this whole thing works. And there's all kinds of quotes about that in the one piece I was reading a little while ago, written by Katie Wu at The Athletic. Now, let's move on to what John Mozeliak had to say earlier today. Jim, you can guide us through. It might be easier that way.
Sure. We'll start off with basically his outlook on, this is John Mozeliak, on signing this extension.
I'm lucky. And, you think about all the different jobs you can have in sports and the type of people you work with. I happen to work with Bill DeWitt, who I think most people would agree is one of the best owners in all of sport. And so when you do what I do, having ownership support is critical to being able to create that successful model over time. Our goal is to still win a World Series, and we're going to put our best foot forward on that. But we also are grateful for what we have below and how we continue to build on that. So, I do think it's an exciting time. Bill touched on it. We have a very strong major league club. We have a really strong minor league system. You combine that with an outstanding scouting staff, it usually leads to a pretty successful model. So super excited about the next few years. I know there's going to be some change coming over the next few years. We certainly want to give individuals at the company and within the organization opportunities to grow, expand some of their roles, and over the course of the next year or so, we'll work through all of that.
All righty.
At the end of that, where he says it's time for others to grow, and I know, Derek, you talked a little bit about this. I think that is one thing over the course of John's tenure here that they've done. There's always been a point where they go, okay, it's time to give some other guys an opportunity here to grow and move forward. We saw it on the field with coaches, where at one point where they said, all right, it's time to bring some of these guys up from the minors and let the stubby collapse and some of these other guys get their opportunity. I'll be curious to see who these people are within the front office who get that chance.
It'll be Gersh, and Randy Flores is a rising star, and also Matt Slater, one of their they have several like assistants. Matt Slater's a highly regarded guy, and of course there's Moises Rodriguez. I think that's his name. I always screw that up, and I know him, so that's indefensible for me. There's a lot of front office talent there. I know people make fun of Gersh, but Gersh has got his own role, and it's kind of underrated. He does a lot of the leg work and advance work as far as setting the groundwork for trades. He's a good advance man, is a good way to put it, and he's also got a touch with the analytics. So anyway, go right ahead. Continue.
The next one is on John reaching 30 years in the organization with the extension here.
Longevity usually means you're in a good spot and you've created something that people feel it's worth bringing you back for. And I think about over my time with the Cardinals, I started at a entry-level position, and then to be sitting here next to Bill over that time, I think it speaks volumes for the opportunities I was given and was able to take advantage of those.
In John Mozeliak's 15 seasons as the general manager, let's do a quick accounting. 15 seasons as the general manager. They have the third best winning percentage in the regular season, third best winning percentage in the majors. They've competed in more postseason games than any National League team except the Dodgers. They've won 6 NL Central titles, qualified for 10 postseasons. Of course, 2 NL pennants in a World Series. They've played in 5 NLCS rounds. But again, we know can I do this without repeating like every other second that they've been failing in the postseason? Can I do that? Because I think we all know that, right? Yeah. St. Louis's 10 postseasons appearances under Mozeliak are the third most in the majors over that time. The Dodgers have 12, the Yankees 11, the Cardinals 10. Those are the top 3. I think we can agree. I think even maybe the Mo haters would have to reluctantly agree. Mozeliak has done this at a fraction of the payroll cost compared to what the Dodgers and Yankees spend. That's factually correct. The Cardinals will enter 2023 as the Cardinals and Yankees, the only major league teams that have a streak of 15 consecutive winning seasons going into this year. Just to show you like how the Cardinals have been a good team under Mozeliak in both offense and pitching. Since the start of the 2008 season, they're tied. The Cardinals are tied for the second best ERA in the majors, and they are tied for 6th in the majors with an average of 4.6 runs scored per game. So they're number 2 in pitching. They're number 6 in offense, and their base running and defense have been exceptional as well. They have maintained a strong farm system that supplies much of their big league talent. You look at the 40-man roster, 47.5% of the players on their 40-man roster are homegrown. 47.5% are homegrown. Sorry. That's the 6th highest percentage among the major league franchises. Since the start of the 2011 season, the Cardinals have the 3rd best winning percentage. They rank 3rd for most postseason games. They rank 3rd for most postseason victories. And since 2011, only the Dodgers have competed in more postseasons than the Cardinals. I mentioned this earlier, but the Cardinals are only one of 6 MLB teams to play in 4 straight postseasons, 2019 through 2022. Dodgers, Braves, Rays, Yankees, and Astros are the other ones. And as I mentioned, over the last 4 seasons, 8 teams have not made the playoffs one time. 9 have made it only one time. And only 7 of the 30 franchises have qualified for the playoffs more than 2 times over the last 4 years. So making the postseason does matter, and I don't take it for granted. But yes, the Cardinals absolutely have to push to make more of the opportunities they have by making the playoffs. Some of the look. First of all, every manager he's hired has had success. We can trash some of those guys, but he's hired 3 managers and they've produced a .558 winning percentage, and which is basically tied for 3rd overall in the majors. Plus, those 3 managers have gotten the team to 8 postseasons, and this is since 2012 because that's when he hired his first manager, Matheny. Then it was Schilt, then it was Marmol. And you look at the job Marmol has done. I mean, he was the youngest manager to win a division, and I know it's a soft division, but still, youngest manager to win a division in 53 years, Ali Marmol. Trades, and let me say up front, because of course we all know John Mozeliak's the only one who's ever made any bad trades whatsoever. No other general manager ever does that. So he's made some bad trades, but he's also made trades for Matt Holliday, David Freese, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Jake Westbrook, Rafael Furcal, John Lackey, Jason Hayward, Octavio Dotel, Giovanni Gallegos, Edward Mejica, Mark Chemsky, Edwin Jackson, John Lester, J. A. Happ, Quintana, Jordan Montgomery, Ryan Ludwig. Some of you right now are undoubtedly saying, well, why are you bringing up Octavio Dotel? Why are you mentioning Edwin Jackson? What? all of the guys I mentioned, and there are more, all of the guys I mentioned some were members of the 2011 World Series champions. Some were, some were members of both things, the 2011 World Series, 2013 NL pennant. Some were all-star selections. Some did very important work out of the bullpen. Others were in-season trade acquisitions who brought stability and success to a broken rotation. We've seen that the last 2 years running. This list also has an MVP, Goldschmidt, multiple Gold Glove winners, a World Series hero, all-star selections, and arguably the best defensive third baseman in modern times in Arenado. Free agent signings, couple misses, but they don't win the World Series in 2011 unless Mozeliak signed Lance Berkman, and at the time he did, I'll never forget it, because I was hosting Bernie's press box at STL Today. When he signed Berkman, 90% of the people were trashing him for doing it. They don't win the World Series without Berkman. They don't win the 2013 NL pennant unless Mozeliak quickly signs Carlos Beltran as a free agent after losing Pujols to the Angels. Perhaps the latest free agent signing, Contreras, will deliver a substantial payoff. And it was Mo who reached out to Albert Pujols to bring him home. And what happened last season for Pujols, it was unforgettable for Pujols, the fans, the team, and really all of Major League Baseball. Plus, they won 93 games. Again, he's made some bad trades. He's had a couple bummer free agent signings, which applies to every other general manager or president of baseball operations in the majors. Not exclusive to St. Louis. I know it's hard to believe. So let's continue. I just wanted to jump in there and actually talk about his body of work, which also includes a 4-15 record in the postseason since start of 2015. So that's the big failure in terms of a recent trend. It's up to DeWitt and Mozeliak to try to overcome that. They have to quit being so stubborn about that. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
No, I will. I'm going to jump to number 5 based on what you just talked about. And this is John Mozeliak just kind of mentioning, hey, no losing seasons as a GM or president. And this is a reaction to the questions.
When you think about winning seasons, that's nice. But I think like the biggest thing over 15 years was we've never had the rebuild. We've never had the tear it down, have a couple painful years, and then hope for the best on the end. And I think like when you're trying to appease a fan base, especially one that shows up in such numbers of 3 million and more a year, I think they're grateful for the type of product that we roll out there. And so look, we understand that the ultimate goal is to be the last man standing, but when you think about sort of that journey to get there, we do take a lot of pride in winning years.
There's a couple other things on this sheet, and number 3, he said, we're not gonna get caught up in trying to keep up with the game's top spenders. Okay, he says that, and then he also said that it would be foolish for the front office to overreact to fan discontent over the lack of recent deep playoff runs. Now, I just got done praising Mo because his body of work as the Cardinals baseball leader in the front office is distinguished despite what anybody else wants to say. It's absolutely distinguished. The recent trends are not fun, them getting skunked in the postseason over and over again. So I have an issue when he frames this as, well, we can't get too caught up in trying to keep up with the game's top spenders by trying to match them. No one is asking you to match Steve Cohen, the Mets, right? Mm-hmm. No one's asking you to match the Yankees or the Dodgers or even now the kooky Padres, what they spend. Absolutely no one is demanding that. What we are asking for is, why don't you actually go get yourselves a top-of-the-rotation starter? And if it costs some money, so be it. And we're not asking you to overreact to the fact that some fans are not happy over the lack of recent playoff runs. No one is saying, look, you have to overreact now. No. what we're saying, I say, we all say, is you have a really good baseball team, and you've had a really good baseball team for a long, long time. But now it's coming up short, and why don't you push the envelope a bit? Why don't you get out of your comfort zone just a bit to clear that last hurdle and give yourself a better chance to win the postseason? That's not overreacting to say that. And it certainly isn't demanding that, well, you have to spend with all these other big spenders. No, they don't. They don't. They don't have to. I just gave you all numbers about where they rank compared to the Dodgers and the Yankees in terms of postseason success and regular season success over a long period of time, even though those two franchises have outspent them by a few $1 billion. I said B as in boy, $1 billion, because I've done the study on that. So I don't like when he plays defense by sort of ginning up something that's misstating what fans and media are asking that they should do, or advising or suggesting what they should do.
Shall we hear the last cut here where he's talking about? Okay, let's get to that one here.
We, everybody in that building, everybody standing behind you, they want a long run, right? But like, just because you want it doesn't mean it happens, right? And I think like how we think about adding to our club or investing in our club is always about what can help us now, but how's that going to position us later? And you know, there's two ways of attracting talent, right? And one is you can go out in the free agent market and acquire it, or you can go out and trade for it. And you can think about like two of the best players in that clubhouse right now were traded for. Actually, three if you count Adam Wainwright going way back. So the point being is like we're always looking at what those acquisitions might look like. And of course, when you look at this past offseason where people were saying, oh, we should do X, Y, and Z, again, we were looking at it in terms of what's the incremental cost to do that versus what we have. And we felt like what we have is better than what we might go get. And so, you know, that's the bet we're making, and we'll see. And we hope that the consistency of how we've performed over the years will give us a little bit of street credibility, or at least internal credibility, for that decision making.
Well, it does. I think they do have credibility, but again, they have to just go that extra mile or even half mile. That's all. I know some people were being totally unreasonable, saying, well, they need to go get a number one starter and Trey Turner or whatever. That wasn't going to happen, but, man, they could at least have gotten one or the other without going out of business. I don't think it would have bankrupted the Cardinals. No one is demanding them to do these things that just are way beyond the pale in terms of what the Cardinals normally do. But we are asking that they make a targeted effort to strengthen themselves at a key spot or two. That's all. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's unreasonable at all. So that's what kills me. But again, it's such a soft media market that, you know, Mo gets to play that hand, you know, where it's like, people are saying we should do this, and people are saying we should do. Dude, if you were in New York or Boston or Philly or Chicago, I could think of some other places where you had to deal with media that was up in your face all the time. Don't be acting like, you know, you guys are being persecuted. You got it so easy, it's laughable in this town, right?
Oh, yeah.
So